Time, guys. Didn't go live for me, so I'm going live now. Amen. This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsh. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Lotierzo and Jack Hirsh.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fists. My name is Frank Lotierzo, former fighter, part-time writer, full-time observer, sitting here in a storm with tornado warnings in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, joined by co-host Jack Hirsh, former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, how are you tonight?
Real good, Frank. Real good.
All right, Jack. We have a couple.
I'm raring to go. I'm waiting for the opening bell for this show, Frank. I'm like,
are you good?
Ready to get going.
I have an upset stomach, so you're gonna have to be the Iron Man tonight.
Well, listen, I'm gonna hit you with a lot of body shots tonight, Frank. So it might not make you feel any better.
Maybe my stomach's upset because I knew I was coming on with you. Maybe.
How
about that?
Case of nerves. Yeah.
All right, Jack. So we have a couple things on the table. We have a fight between Oscar Valdez and Navarrete. I know you covered the Jake Paul Diaz fight, Nate Diaz fight. Joshua White 2 has been canceled because of Dillian White's failed drug test. I don't know, Jack. Do they have a replacement yet for him?
No, but last I heard, no, they were working on it. So if it did happen, it happened just a little while ago.
Okay, the names I saw were Chisora and Hasim Rahman Jr. were the two names I saw. Have you heard anything else?
Please tell me it's not Hasim Rahman Jr. That would be brutal. That would be brutal to watch. They shouldn't be allowed to make that fight. It would be a sickening mismatch, a fight like that to be made. Derek Chisora, you would think, would be a mismatch as well, but at least Chisora would have the possibility of winning because he is a tough guy and he moves forward, and there's always a chance he could break Joshua. There's always that chance, but Chisora has taken so much punishment. He was training for a fight on the undercard, so you would think he would be in condition. Getting ready for a fight. So they'll just move him up to the main event. And
that's probably what's going to happen now. Will they make that pay-per-view?
No. They said they're not having a pay-per-view anymore. Dillian White is basically a shot fight anyway. He denies taking performance-enhancing drugs.
He did the other 2 times, too.
Right. Don't they all deny it all the time? They're always innocent.
Has anyone ever came out and admitted it?
Yeah. Conor Ben is a victim of it, too. The sad part about this is, Frank, they always get away with it at the end. All it does is delay fighters' careers. Canelo Alvarez with the tainted meat. Okay? And listen, I'm not saying there's not a rare possibility that a guy may have ingested the wrong thing or truly unknowingly something went down. He went to his dentist and was given something. I don't know. But I'm sick of these guys' complete denials over and over and over. But the boxing authorities don't do anything about it. They never.
Big Baby Miller paid, though, Jeff. Jack, he was out 2 years.
Okay, Jarrell Miller, it was his 3rd time. It was his 3rd time. He was caught. It got to the point where Jarrell Miller forced them to do something. Like think of the person that's timid is never going to fight back. The only time he's going to fight back if someone is wailing on him in that moment and he's got to defend himself and he has no choice. That's what boxing did as far as Jarrell
Joe
Miller.
Bergman says
Jarrell Miller will be in a big fight soon. So when all is said and done,
absolutely. Joe Bergman said, what is that? Even though he fought Saturday, they're talking about Hellenius. I can't see that, Joe. The guy fought Saturday. They're going to let him fight 7 days later. Jack, can they do that? I guess they could.
Yeah, they can do it as long as he won his fight and he came out of it. Okay. The same Robert Hellenius who got knocked out with one punch in the first round by Deontay Wilder.
Right.
They're going to put him with Anthony Joshua. Not a good look for Joshua. I'm going to tell you why, because people are going to do a comparison. If he doesn't knock Hellenius out within a couple of rounds,
he looks bad.
Yeah, listen, don't get me wrong. If he dominates and stops him in 3-4 rounds, okay. I mean, it's not a setback. But can you imagine Hellenius takes him 9-10 rounds? Heaven forbid he goes the distance.
And that would not look good with the Wilder fight supposedly set for December, right?
Yeah, but you want to know something, Frank? The way it works in boxing, as you fully know, a guy could have a bad performance and we could say his stock went down. But by the time Wilder would fight Joshua, would do big business. Because boxing now, Frank, I've determined fighters don't earn things on merit alone anymore. It's how they're marketed. It's their brand. Anthony Joshua's a brand. You'd agree with that, right? He's a brand fighter. And to a small extent, Deontay Wilder is to a small extent. Tyson Fury's a brand. Canelo's a major brand. Okay? And they're not, it's just a few boxers aren't just, I mean, they're more than just fighters. It's kind of like an event they fight. If Canelo's fighting, people might say, oh, this is fight night. Canelo's fighting. Like, so it's kind of must-see watching only because it's Canelo.
Yeah, Joshua was a big brand, and then he lost a couple fights, Jack. And if it is Hellenius or if it's Chisora, you know what my game plan is. Go out there and empty the kitchen sink, because it doesn't matter if you get knocked out in the second round or if you go 10. But if you go out there and you unload on him and you catch him, you might catch lightning in the bottle. And I think Joshua's going to be very, very careful with who they take, because they have to protect that Wilder fight. And Jack, in all honesty, I'm not convinced the Wilder fight happens.
Excuse me. I would think it would, because where else is Joshua going to go? The money's going to be enormous. I mean, he can fight in the UK. The Dillian White fight was going to do great business in the UK because Dillian White's from there. They had a rivalry all these years, even though Dillian White's basically a shot fighter. He's still a little bit of a brand name himself in the UK. And notice that's where they were fighting. The fight wouldn't have wound up having appeal if they fought anywhere else. And the idea that we're talking about them, Frank, we're the survey in a certain sense. If they listen to our show, we talk about Anthony Joshua a lot, maybe more than should be merited. We talk more about Anthony Joshua than we do about Usyk. Think about it.
Because he has that star power, Jack. There's just something about him. He's a big, strong, good-looking guy, and he's just a draw. But I was thinking, this was about a month ago, and if I were Joshua, I would look for Wilder, and it would be like a kill or be killed. Joshua's career is over unless he does something crazy to jumpstart it. And Wilder, he may have some confidence problems of his own. Plus, he can only punch. He's not really a good boxer. Joshua should go right at him and try and make that fight. If he gets knocked out doing it, so what? He's got money. He can retire. And if he doesn't have to go through this nonsense ever again, if he wins, he's back in the picture in a big way. And actually, I'd give the same advice to Wilder, because he's kind of in the same situation. Because if you think about it, we don't know what Wilder has left from that last Fury fight. He fought one round with Hellenius. That didn't tell us anything.
It's about Frank. It's about business.
Yep.
Wilder doesn't have any single match that's going to be a major high profile unless he fights Anthony Joshua. You could say Usyk to a small extent because Usyk's the world champion.
That would be that'd be an interesting fight.
It would be intriguing. But Joshua has the biggest fight in the heavyweight division outside of Fury and Usyk. Joshua and Fury in the UK is off the charts. Even you put it in Saudi Arabia, it's a mega fight. So all Anthony Joshua has to do is hold serve, don't lose, win his fights, and eventually Fury you would think would come around. Because what else is Fury going to do as a boxer? Okay, he's fighting a mixed martial artist. His next fight, boxing fans don't care about
Trained
that.
by Mike Tyson, by the way.
Trained by Mike Tyson. But the thing is, with Fury, he's going to make big money in that fight. I don't know how much he's going to rush into box again, and you know,
it's a joke.
But Anthony
Randy Gordon says, our buddy Randy Gordon says, I think AJ's confidence is gone. Randy, I agree with that, and as you and Jack know, I've been saying that for a while. I don't think he's been the same guy since the Klitschko fight, and I think whatever was left of that guy, the first Ruiz fight, pushed him off the cliff. And I think now he's a guy that fights not to get knocked out. I wasn't impressed against Jermaine. What was Jermaine's last name? The guy he fought, I forget.
Franklin.
Jermaine Franklin. Okay.
And
I was not impressed there. And I don't see him ever beating Usyk. I don't think he beats Fury. I don't think he'll beat Wilder. Who else is out there? I'm not sure he beats Joe Joyce. He wouldn't beat Zhang. So I think Anthony Joshua Roy.
Yeah, he would beat Zhang. Yeah.
Not a chance.
But
not a chance.
Not beating Zhang? Are you kidding me, Frank? Come on. But the point is, we don't know where Anthony Joshua's confidence is at. It's easy to say, well, it hasn't been the same since he got stopped by Ruiz. The evidence that you point out, and it's fair, is how Joshua fought the rematch. Very conservatively. He boxed, was willing to take the win. He boxed more conservatively in that fight than he ever has before, and I was coming off the loss. So that's fair. But let me throw this at you. If his confidence was gone, he didn't have to fight Usyk the first time. He took on that challenge. Everyone knew how dangerous Usyk was, what a big threat.
But Usyk's not a puncher, Jack. And I think he thought he could bully Usyk.
Late in the fight, he had Usyk in bad trouble and was taking it to him. But Usyk, being the great fighter he has, survived it. Said he didn't have a lack of confidence when he hurt Usyk in the second fight. He fought more aggressively in the second fight than the first. He wasn't content to just go the distance and lose and look good losing. Anthony Joshua made every effort to win that Usyk rematch. And against Jermaine Franklin, we don't know how tough Jermaine Franklin is. He's lost 2 fights, a controversial decision to Dillian White.
Right.
Fight with Joshua. For all we know, by the time Jermaine Franklin's career is over, he could be a modern-day George Chuvalo for all we know. And then we're going to say, you want to know something? It doesn't look so bad, Joshua decisively outpointing Franklin. We didn't know.
We'll have to see how that works out. I'm not sure he's George Chuvalo. I still say to this day that Anthony Joshua has nightmares about that 9th round with Usyk because he had him hurt. After the 9th round, I had him down 5-4 with 3 to go. But Usyk is the one that sucked it up. And I just think Joshua I think if he could redo or run anything back, I think he'd like to have that again. But you know what? That's why Usyk is the better fighter. In the moment of truth, he seized it. And Joshua, he didn't. He kind of let it go.
Yeah.
And I see Randy says that I didn't know that Joshua was in talks to fight Joseph Parker, who he did decision, and he did not look good in that fight. He basically won that fight with his jab. Anthony Joshua, to me, does not let his hands go. I did a post on this, Jack, about 3 months ago, and I watched the first fight with Dillian White. And when you watch that fight, all you have to do is watch about a minute and a half of, say, the 4th, 5th rounds of it, 4th and 5th rounds, and you can see that Anthony Joshua is not the same guy. He doesn't let his hands go. Before he would answer his opponent's punches. He put them together. Now he just kind of hides behind that jab and shoots the right once in a while. But no, he is not the same guy.
Well, I noticed they're looking to get Joshua someone he can look spectacular against, hopefully. Dillian White would have been that fighter. He's a shot fighter. Joshua would have stopped him. It's a question of just when. But if they get him Hasim Rahman Jr., please. I mean, it gets
No, that's a joke.
A bit
That's
much.
a joke.
Listen, that's a real good fight. I mean, this weekend, which is a pick'em fight, even though Oscar Valdez is favored at something like around 7-5 over Manuel Navarrete. I'm going with Navarrete in that fight. Navarrete,
Jack,
yeah.
I'm not sure I've seen Navarrete. You know what? I know he's won 3. I know he's won belts at 22 and 26. He's a 3-division champ. I know that. But for some reason, I can't place him. But I know I like Oscar Valdez a lot. And if you remember before he fought Shakur Stevenson, he was talking about how Shakur can't punch. And by the time they were in the 4th round, Shakur was the puncher in the fight and had him backing up the whole time. That was a very impressive win by Shakur.
Well, yeah, it was. But in this fight with Oscar Valdez, he's going to take it to Emmanuel Navarrete. And he's going to learn something about Emmanuel Navarrete. No fighter in boxing, no one has a higher work rate than Emmanuel Navarrete. Once he gets going, he punches. There are more skilled guys than Emmanuel Navarrete, but no one can match that work rate. And that's what Oscar Valdez is going to have to, try to do, especially the second half of the fight.
And that's going to make for a great fight.
It should be a great fight, exactly.
And that'll tell us a little bit more about, not that we need to know, because I still think Shakur is going to, when all is said and done, I think he's going to retire, and we're going to look at him as the best of this lightweight lot.
Better than Tank Davis?
Yes.
That's an interesting thing when all is said and done. Now, I just like to say best fighter, period. Because I don't like to say divisions, because historically it's not as important as it used to be. Who's the best in which division? That's how we used to rate the greatness of fighters.
Because they fight in all different divisions now.
Exactly. Like someone like a Roy Jones Jr., hypothetically, if he was a middleweight his whole career and accomplished what he did, I could conceivably say he was the greatest middleweight of all time, conceivably, because of his level of dominance in his prime. But he moved around divisions. So where can I rate Roy Jones Jr. in any division? Can I rate him in top 5 in any division? I don't think so.
I would just say this, Jack. When I rate Roy Jones, I rate him as a light heavy. And the reason why I say that is because that's where he had most of his title fights. And that's where he fought the longest in his prime until he lost to Montel Griffin. I think that was his 49th or 50th fight. I think that Roy is basically made his mark as a light heavyweight. But if you think about this, in a span of a year, think about what he did. He beat Bernard Hopkins at 160, 8 rounds of 4, when Hopkins was clearly the second best guy in the division. And then he goes to 168, and he won at least 10 to 12 rounds against James Toney. And I used to laugh when people would say, Roy hasn't fought anybody. Well, I don't think there's anybody watching this that would say, they might about Hopkins, but Toney is an all-time great. I think Hopkins is an all-time great. And Roy Jones beat both of those guys within a year without any trouble at all.
Yeah, but
2 great wins.
As much as I revere Roy Jones, and he is an all-time great, one of the greatest of all time, fighters don't really seek the ultimate greatness the way they could. They don't take the ultimate risks. In the case of Roy Jones, he didn't go to Germany to fight Darius Mikkelsen.
Now, we know why, though.
Because of what happened in the Olympics. He
was
paranoid. And that decision in the Olympics, after that happened and he was robbed of the gold medal, I didn't want to know from amateur boxing anymore. They could have done away with amateur boxing.
You could see why he was jaded, though, about going to Germany.
But he didn't go to Wales, the UK to fight Joe Calzaghe. Like, even right now, take the case of Terence Crawford, okay? I don't know what's going to happen with the Spence rematch. If Spence activates the rematch clause, Crawford has to take it. So he takes the rematch clause, fine. He probably doesn't complain. He understands it's a contractual thing. But let's say Spencer's going to take some step aside money the promoters would give him. To me, I want to see a fighter like a Terence Crawford chase the ultimate greatness. And you know what you do? You fight a Tim Tszyu in Australia, knock him out there. Crawford would stop him. Do it in Australia. That's why I originally liked what Devin Haney did when I thought he could be a generational talent. I go, wow, this guy's going after George Kambosos in Australia. Kambosos, when he was hot property, coming up a lot, and had to beat him twice there. And he risked.
He bet on himself, right?
He bet on himself. I can't fault him for taking the Lomachenko match because you figure Lomachenko's slipping. It's a big payday. Now, after the Lomachenko match, he's picking and choosing his spots. It's like he's running away from Shakur Stevenson. And in fights like that, he doesn't want to know from Shakur Stevenson, Devin Haney. And as far as Shakur goes, Shakur has no big fights. He has to chase the big fights. It's not like he can pick and choose. When a fighter can pick and choose, we have an idea as to his greatness.
Right. When he's a name and he can announce who he's going to fight, like a Pacquiao, Mayweather, or Canelo, he's going to get the fight.
Like Oscar De La Hoya, say what you want about him, but when you look at all the tough challenges he took,
he doesn't get credit for that.
In their prime, Mosley was in his prime.
Trinidad was in his prime. Vargas, Corte.
He could have. He didn't steer clear of those fights. The only fight he may have steered clear with a little bit, there wasn't a demand, was Winky Wright, perhaps, at that time. But
the issue with Jack, the issue I have with Oscar is what you just said is true. Yeah, he went into the guns, no doubt, but he really doesn't have a conclusive win among those big fights, other than Fernando Vargas. He lost the first Mosley fight. He should have got the decision in the second one, but he didn't get it. So he's 0-2 versus him. The Corte fight came down to the last round. He had Trinidad beat, tried to run the clock out. Who did I leave out? And the Whitaker fight could have gone either way. I think I had Oscar pulling that out in the last round because Purnell didn't fight.
Yeah, I was in the Thomas and Mack Center for that. I had Oscar winning 7 rounds of fight. But you mentioned a good point, Frank. If you look at virtually all of Oscar's big fights, okay, most of them, they were close. We're not talking about the Pacquiao one when he was past his peak, probably weight drained, and who knows whether he ever would have beaten Pacquiao, but that's a debate for another time. Mayweather was a close fight. Most people feel Floyd won. Him and Trinidad was a close fight. Most people feel Oscar won. Whitaker and Oscar split opinion.
So see, with the elite names, he never separated himself.
No, but they didn't separate them from him. And think of all the quality fighters he fought. They didn't separate him from him. And Frank, think of how boxing history would have played out in the ring there at Las Vegas when he's against Mayweather. And they say the winner on a split decision, the golden boy, Oscar De La Hoya. That would have derailed the Floyd Mayweather hype, okay? He wouldn't have been on the exhibition tour like this. He wouldn't have had that unbeaten record to go on. And chances are Oscar doesn't fight him again because Floyd's name isn't as big. Oscar goes, screw it. And it wasn't, I thought Floyd deserved the decision over Oscar.
I thought he pulled it out in the last 2 rounds.
But the point is, it's not beyond the comprehension that Oscar could have gotten the decision. It wouldn't, because some people actually feel he won the fight.
I agree. And Jack, we're going to come back to this later because there's a lot of talk about how good or great Terence Crawford is, and a lot of people are going back and forth with that. I want us to do that, but I want to do it a little later in the show. Let's talk about one carnival act and one we may see the carnival act. The carnival act is the Nate Diaz Paul fight. I did not see it other than highlights. I think you covered it. Tell us about it.
Yeah, my publication, Boxing News, wanted me to cover it, but they were practically apologizing to me in the sense, well, you don't really have to if you don't want it, Jack, because it seemed like when it comes to Jake Paul, everyone seems to be apologizing, like it's not a real fight. Consider this: Jake Paul was 6-1 entering the fight. He's 7-1 now. Nate Diaz, his opponent's 0-1. Between the two of them, at least entering the fight and exiting the fight, neither had ever beaten a professional boxer. Yet they were having a professional boxing match.
And that's something I didn't think of that.
$60, Frank. $60 was the price tag. The only professional boxer who Jake Paul's ever fought is Tommy Fury. So there, he's 0-1.
And he lost.
And what is he? He's 7-0 against mixed martial artists. But with that said, I'm going to try to be a little positive here as far as the fight itself. For a guy who never had a pro boxing match, kudos to Nate Diaz. He went 10 rounds at a fairly quick pace. That's a different.
He has a boxing background, but he's never fought competitively.
And you could tell in his style, he was fighting Jake Paul in an MMA style, throwing MMA type punches, and at times it'd be effective. He would rock Jake Paul on occasion, and he would come in very awkwardly. At one point at the end of the round, he faked like he was going to butt him, and he wanted it to be obvious, saying, "Look, I could split your head open if I want to." And he got hurt in the first round, and I thought this was going to be a quick fight. And he recovered. He came on, and he got knocked down with a left hook high on the temple in the 5th round. He recovered. He rallied a bit in the 8th and 9th round of the fight. And Paul, I'll say this for him, compliment. He kept the business during the fight. He kept to his fundamentals. He boxed well, very well within his limits. He wasn't showboating in any way. And he fought very smartly, doing what he had to do. But with that said, how good is Jake Paul? I kind of wonder if you put him in an amateur tournament like the Golden Gloves, would he actually win the tournament? I'm not sure. Maybe he would because he weighs about 185. And Frank, when you go up to the higher weights in amateur boxing, they're not as good as they are.
He would probably fight at light heavyweight.
Yeah, I would think, he could be a Golden Glove champion perhaps. But
I think so.
Jake Paul is, I'll say this for him. He's getting to the point where you could maybe say he's a better than average 8-round fighter. Better than average, and leave it at that. No more than that.
The big question is everybody wants to know, though, what's going to do more buys, Crawford and Spence or Paul and Diaz?
Well, if I want to use an intangible, Crawford and Spence had an $85 price tag. This had a $60 price tag. I don't know whether the extra $25 would have a bearing on it. But Crawford and Spence was a boxing fan Super Bowl. But unlike Pacquiao and Mayweather, for example, when Pacquiao fought Mayweather, I knew people, co-workers of mine, women who couldn't care less about boxing. They'd have company over, the dips, the hors d'oeuvres. It would be party time. People would gather. It was like a Super Bowl type party atmosphere. Mayweather and Pacquiao, it was more than just the fight. Crawford and Spence, I don't think, quite got to that point. Not quite.
No, Jack. Crawford and Spence did about 600,000 buys, right?
Yeah, that's not. Listen.
And Mayweather and Pacquiao did over 4 million. Jack, it just goes to show that sizzle sells over substance. Now, the Crawford Spence fight did not turn out to be a good fight. I was wrong on that prediction. I thought that
No, Frank. Well, no, give Spence his due. He took a beating, but he hung in, went until late in the 9th round, and never stopped trying. He was moving forward.
But Jack, don't you think the drama was gone after the middle of the 3rd round?
You know what the drama was? The drama to me is why wasn't it stopped? I'm disgusted with the ringside physicians, not only in Texas, all over. And I used to be on the board of directors of the American Association of Professional Ringside Physicians. I like the guys a lot. I don't like the way they work. Their mindset, as long as a fighter has a chance to win and he's punching back, let him get the hell beat out of him. It doesn't matter. I
think Derek James was in a tough spot, Jack. He never saw him take a beating like that before, and I think he believed in him. Looking back in hindsight, yeah, he could have pulled the trigger sooner, but I do think he was in a tough spot, and I hate to get on a guy who was in the moment like that, and he's seen Spence. He never saw him take a thrashing like that, and I just think he felt somewhere in his heart of hearts that he might have pulled it out. Hopefully, he didn't ruin his career. I don't know if Spence will ever be the same. That to me is one of those fights he could do it. He took a lot of hard, clean shots. But where I was wrong, Jack, even though you disagree, I thought it would be a more competitive fight. And Crawford is still trading off of that today. And it's amazing how his fan base has grown overnight, Jack. It's amazing. Like at one time, say we go back 3 weeks ago, you could put Floyd Mayweather up against any contemporary fighter in a hypothetical fight, and all the fans, whether they're casuals or hardcore fans, they would all favor Mayweather. I think I've seen the poll with Crawford and Spence, and I think it's about, Crawford and Mayweather, and I think it's about 70-30 that people favor Crawford. It's like that just goes to show you how good he is, Jack, because what they see in Crawford is he's equal to Mayweather as a boxer. He's equal to Mayweather in brains. He's probably a little stronger. We know he hits harder, and I actually think he's more versatile than Mayweather, and it's just unbelievable. If you would have asked that question 10 days ago, nobody except me would have said that Crawford could beat Mayweather. Now, in a hypothetical fight, Crawford's actually the favorite.
You said something, Frank, that was very thought-provoking on the last show that I didn't give it any thought. Comparing Crawford with Mayweather. Mayweather had a lot of fights where he lost a few rounds.
A few split decisions and close calls.
I mean, listen, even against Canelo, he lost, like, let's say 3 rounds, hypothetically, during the fight. And
I think I gave 1 round to Canelo.
Okay,
I disagree with you there.
Bad example in that fight.
Maidana, he lost rounds too.
Maidana, he lost rounds. So even the second fight, he lost maybe 3 rounds. And then the first fight, some people thought a draw wouldn't have been crazy out of the question, even though I thought Mayweather absolutely won the first fight as well. Against Miguel Cotto, he lost a few rounds. Against Oscar,
yes, that was actually I think I had that fight. I think I had it 8-4-1 for Mayweather. But Jack,
8-4-1.
There's a lot.
It wasn't a 13-round fight, Frank. You had
okay, then I had 7-4-1 for Mayweather. I'm sorry. I told you I'm under the weather tonight.
Yeah. I could have let that go, but I know someone out there.
That's all right.
Say, what the heck?
Jack, let me throw out, since there's not that much going on, and Crawford is still a hot topic. I have said since 1970, or if we go back 50 years, that's 73. Okay, that's 1973. That other than Leonard, Hearns, and Duran of the Palomino and first Leonard fight, they're the only guys I would make the favorite over Crawford. So I'm going to throw out some names from you. I picked a lot of names from 73 on, guys that were welterweight champs, and I'm just going to we can do this and have some fun with this. Tell me who you would make favorite over Crawford. I'll go down the names. Billy Backus.
Oh, no, Crawford destroys Backus. Okay. Come on.
Timothy Bradley.
Billy was tough. He doesn't just come in and hit him a few times. I could see Billy Backus being gritty and maybe going 6-7 rounds.
Okay.
Perhaps, yeah.
Okay, so, and we know Bradley we wouldn't give him much of a chance. How about Jose Napoli?
Napoli would pose a serious threat. He really would. But Crawford's mobility, you see, Terence Crawford, what I like about him, he can adapt.
Yes.
You saw how cool and calm the way he adapted to Spencer's style. He adapts the Napoli style, and Napoli's did have some problems with guys who could move, were very mobile. His first fight with Hedgeman Lewis was a close fight.
Who was a very good boxer, by the way.
Right. He points, Napoli's, or maybe Crawford stops him on cuts because Napoli's did cut. That's how he lost this
All
fight.
right.
And he lost the fight to fighter LC Morgan.
To make it easier, don't break down the fight. Let's just do this.
Yeah.
Let's just say who we would favor over Crawford. All right. Next is Lloyd Hunnigan. Who's favored?
Yeah, easy, Crawford.
Okay, I agree. Zab Judah.
Crawford. I mean, Judah could give him a little problems a few rounds.
Corey Spinks.
Yeah, I mean Crawford. Frank,
Okay, John
certain fights I could just give the name and I don't have to explain. But
right,
when you go to a higher level, I think an explanation should be in order.
But Jack, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to the point to see how many guys besides the big three we give a chance to beat them.
Oh, okay.
John Stracey. Yes or no?
Crawford.
Okay. Carlos Palomino.
Crawford.
Wilfred Benitez. I'll take that. I'll go Crawford.
I'll go Crawford.
But close.
But Benitez would give him fits.
Okay. Milton McCrory.
Crawford.
Donald Curry.
Crawford, but if you catch Curry on the top of his game, he's a threat.
It's a tough fight, but so far we haven't said anybody definitively over him. Okay. Marlon Starling.
Crawford, but no walk in the park.
All right. Maurice Blocker's obvious. How about Simon Brown?
Crawford, but Brown was tough early in his title reign.
Buddy McGirt.
Crawford, just McGirt fought like Crawford in a way. Crawford was just better. Yeah.
Okay. Pernell Whitaker.
This is where I said an explanation has to be in order. Frank.
Go ahead.
The welterweight Pernell Whitaker does not beat the welterweight Terence Crawford.
And that's what we're talking about.
Okay, but if you tell me the lightweight Pernell Whitaker.
That's it. That might be a different story. I'll give you that.
What he does as a lightweight, okay? I'm going to tell you, the Whitaker that beat Greg Hogan, I think maybe nips Crawford at this stage.
Okay, so but at welterweight you like Crawford?
No, Crawford, yeah.
Right, okay. Oscar De La Hoya, Crawford, welterweight.
Crawford, but Oscar gives him a good fight.
Okay. Shane Mosley.
Crawford, Crawford.
Vernon Forrest.
Big, tall, strong guy who can punch. Wow. But Crawford would have the answers eventually.
Danny Garcia.
Do you watch The Honeymooners? Don't make me laugh, Ralph.
Okay.
I say I respect. He's a good fighter. He doesn't beat Crawford. What do you expect me to say, Frank?
We're almost done, Jack. Let's play the game. Okay. Keith Thurman. Obviously, it's Crawford.
Oh, leave me alone with Keith Thurman.
Sean Porter, obviously. How about Mark Breland?
Crawford. Yeah, come on. Yeah.
Corte.
Ike's tough, but Crawford. Yeah.
Margarito.
Crawford.
Maidana.
Crawford.
Paul Williams.
You have to go with, I have to go with Crawford. I couldn't, but Williams is a threat. Big, tall guy, quick. Yeah.
Okay. Crawford that fought Spence against Pacquiao that fought Cotto.
Oh boy, you read my mind, Frank. I kid you not. I was thinking of that earlier today because Pacquiao went into Crawford's dressing room to congratulate him after the Spence fight, and then he tweeted something out nice about Crawford. And I was in Vegas for the Pacquiao-Cotto fight. He was a machine, Frank.
Pacquiao was awesome that night.
He was a machine. That was peak Manny Pacquiao. An absolute machine, nonstop punching, quick. Cotto made it a little easier for him by exchanging punches all fight. And that was Miguel Cotto in his prime. Let's point that out. Okay? Who Pacquiao stopped. I mean, I'm poisoned against Pacquiao because in most of his performances, Crawford would beat Pacquiao more than Pacquiao would beat him. You know,
Okay.
if they did best 4 out of 7, I'll go with Crawford 4 out of 5. But if it's the one night against Miguel Cotto, I don't know who I'd pick.
I think I think Crawford that beat Spence would take Pacquiao apart. Okay.
The one that beat Cotto,
Yes. Just because of styles.
he wouldn't
Yeah.
take
And
apart.
Pacquiao could not go with Crawford like he did Cotto, who is much more limited. Okay. So about 25 guys that were decent champs between 73 and 2023. And if we take off Leonard, Hearns, and that vintage Duran, the only guys you can see staying with Crawford are the vintage Pacquiao, and you didn't even really give us Whitaker at 147. So
Whitaker at 147 doesn't beat Crawford at 147.
So the only guy, Jack, you have is maybe a toss-up is Pacquiao, and then if you throw Pacquiao with Leonard, Hearns, and Duran, Crawford looks pretty good because I couldn't pick any of those guys to beat Crawford. Jack, Crawford is the most. I almost want to say it. He may be the most complete fighter I've ever seen, where the fact is there is nothing that he can't do. And he's fast and he has power. He knows what punch to throw, when to throw it. He's mean. He wants to hurt you. He wants to finish you. He's a great finisher. And I was debating someone the other day, and he said, well, you know, Spence should have tried to box Crawford and not go after him. And I said, you have to be out of your mind. If Spence doesn't go after Crawford and he tries to outbox him or try to wait and react to what Crawford does, he's going to finish second in a two-man race every time. Spence was in no man's land. He was damned if he did and damned if he didn't. But the only chance he has, and if they fight a rematch, the only chance Spence has, he's got to put the heat on him and try to keep him against the ropes and going back. And what we saw in the last fight was he pays too much of a price to get there and has to slow down his aggression, and that's when Crawford can pick him apart.
Well, the only chance Spence would have in a rematch, if some way, somehow, he can put out of his mind what happened in the first fight. Truly
not going to be easy.
Oh, that's very difficult fight. It might be impossible to do. But if he can convince himself it was an aberration, and let's say, Frank, Spence is telling the truth, he wouldn't make up an excuse even if he had one. Can you imagine there really was something wrong with Spence we didn't know about, that he was sick, he was weak, but he had to go through with the fight? And I'm just being, just.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and that's a crime.
And Spence Spence could be thinking to himself, look, I went deep into the 9th round. This guy should have knocked me out in 3-4 rounds. I mean, he's a heck of a fighter, Crawford, but I know I can beat this guy. If he really is convinced, I don't think he wins still, but he's got a shot. Now, let me throw this at you. I'm going to be a little critical of you, Frank, now. You're singing the praises of Crawford as well you should. You're putting him amongst the all-time greats, which I'm not going to argue with because
of the last 50 years.
Right? Yeah, I can't argue with that. You did pick him to beat Spence, but you did have reservations. So my criticism is based on one fight. And listen, I took Crawford a little cheap too. I picked him to stop Spence at the end, all the way at the end of the fight, 12th round. I thought it was going to be one of the most thrilling fights, of all time, at least in the welterweight division, and it wasn't. So I'm
going to tell you why I didn't say a blowout. Now, first of all, if you remember, I also said that there's a chance, because of the level that Spence fights and all that's on the line, we may see the best Crawford we ever did. But here's where I got a little rubber leg, Jack, and this is personal. I have been touting Terrence Crawford for the last 5 years. I have talked about how terrific I think he is. For me to have been proven right, he had to win that fight and do it somewhat conclusively. And because I stuck my neck out so far on Crawford for the last 5 years, I actually got a little bit shaky thinking, it's just my luck. Because I touted this guy for so long, watch him come up short in the biggest fight of his career. So that did have me a little bit leery. But in truth, I always thought he was the better fighter and puncher, and I was confident he was going to win. But when I felt my reputation was on the line a little bit, and this isn't like just picking a one-off fight, I have said, going back to 18 and 19, when Andre Ward was considered the best pound-for-pound fighter in boxing, I said Terrence Crawford is the best fighter in boxing. But a lot of guys said, well, he hasn't beat a pound-for-pound guy, and obviously there was truth to that, but I don't care. I watch him fight and operate. He is special.
Tell me that the Crawford guideline going forward, what fights do you see happening that are acceptable in the rest of 2023 and 2024? I don't want to get into 2025, Frank. And
Jack, I can't even process that far ahead.
But if Crawford only fights one more time until 2025, it does affect his legacy. The inactivity. I got to hold that against him when I, rate him with other fighters.
Okay.
He can have the Spence rematch. For all we know, it takes place even December or early February 2024.
Right.
Then I want to see he has to fight again after that. I know you like the Jamel Charlo fight, but consider this.
If I could make a fight, Jack, that would be the one, but it's not going to happen.
It's not because Charlo's fighting at 168, going up to meet Canelo. And if Charlo beats Canelo, they probably have it in the contract that there's going to be a rematch.
Right.
Okay. I don't think Canelo would go through with any fight without a rematch clause.
And if Canelo wins, who wants to see Charlo fight Crawford?
No, but if Charlo loses to Canelo, the fight's lost a little bit of
exactly. That's what I said. Exactly. So I think Charlo is off the table. But Jack, to me, if I could make a fight and I was the boxing king of the world, I would scrap the Canelo fight and I would have Crawford and Charlo fight for the undisputed 154 title. So now that can't happen, to me, I think Crawford has to fight either Tim Tszyu, assuming he fights Spence. I think he has to fight either Tim Tszyu or Boots Ennis.
Would you be disappointed if he refused Crawford to fight Tszyu in Australia? Absolutely refused to go, even though the money was there and everything, and he wanted to fight in his comfort zone here. Would that disappoint you if the fight could do better business in Australia than here, him not going? Boots Ennis, that's the fight, Frank, because I'm high on Boots Ennis like you are. And you know what's starting to bother me a little about Crawford? He's dismissive of Boots Ennis right now. That means he considers Ennis a threat, a real threat. Because when you dismiss a guy like Boots Ennis, what's he done? I don't have to fight him. He's beaten nobody. And this way he keeps away from Boots Ennis. I don't like it. I would have loved to have seen Crawford say, yeah, Boots Ennis wants to fight me. Let's make it happen, guys. Let's talk.
But Jack, here's the problem. When you're Crawford and you worked your whole career for that big signature fight and you won it overwhelmingly, you want to parlay that into another fight. So that's where the business comes into play. So I'm not going to put him down. I would like to see the fight, but I think Crawford is probably going to go for Tszyu for one reason, because it would be a fourth title and it's an undefeated guy. And if he took Tszyu apart, that would be a nice win on his resume. Not as good as Charlo, but that can happen. So to me, the only guys that are viable for Crawford would be Stanios, Boots, and
Stanios isn't a serious threat. Let me tell you something. If Charlo fought, let's take Tszyu first. Tszyu fights Crawford. Do you consider Tszyu a serious threat to win the fight?
Yes,
You consider
I would pick him to lose, but I think he's live
You think Zoo's a live underdog against Crawford? You really think that?
because of his size and he can punch. And I think when we see Crawford get beat, Jack, and we will see him get beat, I think it's going to be by a guy that can beat him physically more so than outboxing him. So if Zoo can crowd him and keep him against the ropes and work his body over, and Crawford can't keep him at center ring, I think Zoo has a chance. I don't think Zoo could do it, but I think he has a better chance doing that than Spence or anybody else fighting that style.
Jamel Charlo, how big a threat?
Okay. Prior to seeing Crawford against Spence, I thought it was probably about a 52-48 fight in favor of Charlo, because I think Charlo is enough bigger than Crawford where it would make a difference. I like his jab. He can punch. He has a good chin. He's also money in the big fights, and he's mean too. I think that's the most dangerous fight for Crawford. If Crawford went up to 54.
So you're telling me Charlo is a bigger threat to Crawford than Boots Ennis?
I think to beat him, yes, I do. And that's mainly because of his size and his experience.
So if Boots fought Jamel Charlo, you're telling me you might pick Charlo to beat Boots Ennis?
Boy, I'd have to think about that, Jack, but I know this much. As much as I think of Boots, I wouldn't pick him automatically.
Interesting. Okay.
I would pick Boots to beat anybody else at welterweight. I would pick him to beat Spence, although that's not going to happen. I would pick Boots. Let me see. If Boots was going to fight Tim Tszyu, I would probably pick Boots, but I think he has a harder time than Crawford would.
Okay, interesting, because you have a very high opinion of Boots. I have it as well. And I was kind of wondering, Boots, they're pushing the issue to fight Crawford. You kind of wonder, because I think Boots Ennis could be a megastar in the sport, a megastar, potentially. And to take Crawford on,
I agree.
Maybe he beats Crawford. I'm not dismissive of his chances of beating Crawford. I think he has a genuine chance of actually winning the fight. But how's it going to look? I mean, if Crawford stops him and then he resumes his career, he's always going to have that hanging over his head where he's going to have to explain. Now, we both agree Canelo never would have beaten Floyd Mayweather, even though they say, well, he was younger and experienced. He wasn't going to beat Floyd at Floyd.
That's a bad matchup for Canelo.
Right. But Boots, at his best, especially improving going forward, he'd be in with a chance with anyone.
Jack,
yeah.
As far as Boots, if I were in control of his career, now look, when you get a title shot, you can't turn it down. So if they were offered the Crawford fight, they would definitely have to take it. However,
title shots a dime a dozen these days. Of course, you can.
Jack, it's for all 4 belts. It's for the real title, though. How do you turn that down?
Crawford will be stripped of 1 or 2 of the titles. The way the sanctioning spot is 1 to 3%. Okay. Now I realize certain guys they'll put up with whatever because their 3% from certain fighters means a lot more than from others. But for the most part, they like their own champions.
But Jack, let me finish what I was going to say. If Boots gets the offer to fight Crawford for any belt, let's just say he only has 2 of them then, whatever, he has to take it. However, in a perfect world, if I was managing him, I would want to extend that fight a year out. Because I think a year out, we're going to see some wear on Crawford. Boots will be better. And I think that's when I would want to fight him. I would try to extend it out a year. Because as much as I love Boots, and Jack, I think he's even faster than Crawford. Their punching power is close. I just think the difference is Crawford has been in there with better people. He's used to the big spot. And I just couldn't go against that experience. But it's, Boots would have to take the fight if they offered it to him. But I would rather it be in a year because I think then it favors Boots.
Frank, light heavyweight division there. What's going on with Dimitri Bivol? He hasn't capitalized really on the Canelo win. I know he beat, Ramirez, and he was the fight of the year for the BWAA. So stature, was up there. But him and Beterbiev, I get the feeling that fight will never come off. Beterbiev was supposed to fight Callum Smith. He got injured.
Right.
The fight's now, postponed for the time being. And he'll fight Callum Smith eventually again. Beterbiev's getting older, but there's no signs of slippage during the times we've seen him fight. So who knows where that leaves Bivol? It leaves him to fight no one, basically.
He's going to yell for Canelo, or I don't know.
I wonder, would Canelo have fought him again if Bivol, by some chance, would have called Canelo's bluff and taken Canelo's offer? Canelo was offering Bivol no more money than he
for the rematch, right?
What happens if Bivol said, "Okay, I'll take the same money"? Do you think Canelo would have gone through with the fight? They gave him an offer figuring he'll turn it down, and then they'll say, "You see, he's scared. He doesn't really want to fight."
I don't know, Jack, what he would do. That would be a tough spot because I think Canelo knows inside that Bivol was just wrong for him. Too big, wrong style, has good wheels, jab, can move and jab, has a good chin, he's strong. Canelo could not turn the fight with one punch. It's a bad matchup for Canelo, and unless there's nobody to fight, I don't think for Canelo, I don't think he's going to take that fight. And if he beats Jermell Charlo, where does he go from there? Does he go to Benavidez? Doesn't look that way.
Canelo gets sensitive when someone calls him out like Benavidez. He gets annoyed. He doesn't want to be pressed or pressured into anything. So he kind of tries to pick his spots. Jermell Charlo, in reality, is a junior middleweight. So Canelo's going to have that, physical advantage in this particular fight. But who does he go to next? Eventually, what eventually happens to all these guys, Frank, who pick and choose who they want to fight? It usually always backfires on them because the guy who's going to be the easy touch, one of them is going to come up and beat him. It happens all the time. Look, Ali didn't want a fourth fight with Ken Norton. He'd had enough at that point in his career. So he takes Leon Spinks, Olympic gold medalist, harmless. He'll beat this young kid. Ali wasn't in shape, for the fight, and he gets out hustled and loses. We see it happen, a lot of times. We saw it happen to Larry Holmes. He avoided Pinklon Thomas, takes on Michael Spinks, easier fight supposedly, gets upset in that fight.
Bad style matchup for an old Holmes, Michael Spinks, because he was quicker. Made Holmes fight as the aggressor. Holmes doesn't like doing that. And then Holmes, in his previous fight, did not look great beating Carl the Truth Williams. I thought he won the fight, but he did not look great. And that's another guy that was long with a big jab. And it's just the guys that have the good jabs in the heavyweight divisions, the Listons, the Alis, the Holmes, they don't like to fight guys that jab back. They're so used for guys coming to kill them. They don't like that.
Yeah, but you kind of want fighters to fight the best available opponent out there, and that's true greatness when they did that. That's why I commended Oscar De La Hoya early in the show.
Yeah.
Listen, Oscar De La Hoya wasn't as good as Sugar Ray Leonard. I put him behind Tommy Hearns. I mean,
absolutely,
De La Hoya, but listen. He took on every Tommy Hearns took on every challenge out there. You never heard about.
I think he was the most exciting and the most daring, Jack, of the Fab Four. Hearns. Yeah, I really do.
That was the attitude of Emmanuel Stewart, who handled them as well. Just get the best fights out there, the biggest fights for yourself, and there was never any fear in Tommy Hearns, unlike Sugar Ray Leonard, who had gotten big fights but would sometimes pick and choose a little bit, and pick his spots.
It's just a shame because I think Tommy Hearns still gets a little bit underrated in the grand scheme because he lost to the two best fighters and biggest names he ever fought. Even though he kind of he got even with Leonard, but that's not the fight that people remember. And I think Tommy Hearns, when I see these little posts and say, who's your favorite of the Fab Four? I guess it's probably between Hearns and Leonard. I actually liked Leonard to watch. I don't know if I liked him more than Hearns, but Leonard's skill amazed me. Hearns' power amazed me. But to me, Hearns was the bravest and the most daring, and he had the least bad fights. Every fight Tommy had was exciting, win or lose.
On that note, Frank, good note, that good flurry at the end of the show, backing the great Tommy Hearns. A lot of fun, like always. I look forward to doing this again.
Thanks for carrying the show, Jack. My stomach is doing somersaults. I will see you next week. Thanks for everybody for watching.